Before we start, like and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from, and you can support the channel with a super thanks or by joining. July 2019. That's when I learned that the Florida Everglades held secrets far more terrifying than any drill sergeant's warnings. I'm Marcus Delaney, a sergeant in the United States Army, and what my team encountered during a routine night patrol was the kind of thing that still keeps me awake at night. They say during basic training to be prepared for unexpected events, stay alert, and trust your instincts. But nothing can prepare you for facing something that shouldn't even exist. You ever been to the Everglades at night? Most people think it's just a swamp, maybe some alligators, mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds. They're not entirely wrong, but they're not seeing the full picture either. When the sun goes down out there, the whole place transforms. The water turns black as oil. The trees become twisted silhouettes against whatever moonlight managed to break through the canopy. And the sounds. God, the sounds. Frogs, birds, insects, all creating this wall of noise that somehow makes the silence in between even more unsettling. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Our unit had been tasked with conducting night training exercises in a remote section of the Everglades, about 40 miles west of Fort Myers. The official reason was to prepare for potential deployment to jungle environments, get us comfortable operating in swamp conditions, low visibility, that kind of thing. Seemed straightforward enough. We'd done similar exercises in Georgia, Louisiana, even once in the Amazon basin during a joint operation with Brazilian forces. Swamps were swamps, right? Wrong. The team was small, just 6 of us. Myself as squad leader, Corporal Felix Arden as our tracker and point man, and 4 others, including Private Liam Hatcher, who'd only joined our unit 3 months prior. Liam was young, 22, fresh-faced, and eager to prove himself. Kid had good instincts, though, I'll give him that. He asked questions, paid attention, didn't try to be a hero. The kind of soldier who might actually make it through his first deployment intact if he kept that attitude. We'd inserted around 2,100 hours, right as the last traces of daylight were bleeding out of the sky. The heat was oppressive even at that hour, the humidity so thick you could practically drink the air. Our objective was simple: patrol a predetermined route through about 8 miles of swamp and wetland, identify and mark potential hazards, and rendezvous at an extraction point by 4 hours. 7 hours to cover 8 miles. Should have been a cakewalk. The first hour went exactly as expected. We moved in a staggered column, Arden on point with his night vision goggles, the rest of us maintaining our intervals, weapons at low ready. The water was everywhere, sometimes ankle deep, sometimes up to our knees. The ground beneath was a treacherous mix of mud, roots, and God knows what else. Every step had to be deliberate, tested before committing your full weight. Arden was good at his job, probably the best tracker I'd ever worked with. He'd grown up hunting in the backcountry of Montana, could read signs in the wilderness like you or I read a newspaper. He'd stop periodically, crouch down, examine something, then wave us forward, or signal a direction change. I never questioned his judgment. It was around 10:30 p.m. when things started feeling off. Arden had stopped again, but this time his posture was different. Tense. He raised his fist, the signal for everyone to freeze and take a knee. I moved up beside him quietly. "What have you got, Felix?" I kept my voice low, barely above a whisper. He pointed to the ground with 2 fingers, then gestured for me to look through his NVG. I lifted the goggles and immediately saw what had gotten his attention. Tracks. But not like any tracks I'd ever seen. They were impressions in the mud, about 4 feet apart, running perpendicular to our line of march. Each print was roughly circular, maybe 14 inches in diameter, with what looked like claw marks extending from the front. But the weird thing, the thing that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, was the depth. Whatever made these tracks was heavy, real heavy. The impressions were at least 3 inches deep in firm mud. "Gator?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Arden shook his head slowly. "Wrong pattern. Gators drag their tails, leave a distinct trail. This is just the feet, or whatever it's walking on. And the spacing's all wrong. Too far apart unless we're talking about one hell of a big gator." "How big?" He was quiet for a moment, running his fingers along the edge of one of the prints. "I don't know, Sarge. Bigger than anything I've seen in a swamp, and I've seen some big gators." I studied the tracks more closely. They led off into denser vegetation to our north, disappearing into the darkness. The thing that bothered me most wasn't just the size. It was how fresh they looked. The edges were still crisp. The water seeping into them was clear, not murky. These were recent. Very recent. "All right," I said, making a decision. "Mark the location. We'll report it when we get back. For now, we keep moving on our planned route, but everyone stays sharp. Weapons condition 1. Arden nodded and pulled out his GPS to mark the coordinates. The rest of the team had closed up around us, and I could see the questions in their eyes. Liam in particular looked both nervous and excited, that mixture of emotions you see in young soldiers when something unusual happens. "We good, Sergeant?" Liam asked. "We're good, Hatcher. Just some weird tracks. Probably just a big gator that got lost. But I want everyone alert. Felix, you see anything else unusual? I don't care how small, you let me know immediately. Clear?" "Clear, Sarge." We resumed our patrol, but the easy rhythm from earlier was gone. Everyone was tense now, heads on a swivel, scanning the darkness. The ambient noise of the swamp seemed louder somehow, more aggressive. Or maybe that was just my imagination playing tricks. 20 minutes later, Arden stopped again. This time, he didn't give any hand signals. He just stood there, perfectly still, staring off to our left. I moved up and was about to ask what he was looking at when I saw it too. Movement. Something big, moving through the water about 50 yards out. It was hard to see clearly even with the night vision, just a dark shape gliding through the darker water, sending out ripples that caught what little moonlight filtered through the trees. But the way it moved, it wasn't right. It wasn't the awkward waddling gait of an alligator, or the splashing thrashing of a wild boar. This moved with purpose, with intelligence. "Contact left," I said quietly into my radio. "Unknown entity, approximately 50 yards, moving north to south." The shape continued moving, seemingly unaware of us, or perhaps just unconcerned with our presence. It was there for maybe 15 seconds, 20 at most, then it slipped beneath the surface, without so much as a ripple, like it had never existed at all. We waited in silence for a full minute. Nothing. "Arden?" "I don't know what that was, Sarge, but it wasn't a gator." "How can you be sure?" "Because gators don't move like that. They don't disappear like that. That was something else." I wanted to disagree with him, wanted to write it off as shadows and tired eyes playing tricks, but I'd seen it too. We all had. And Arden was right. Whatever that was, it wasn't any animal I'd ever encountered. "All right, new plan," I said, "and we're going to continue on our route, but we're tightening the formation, 5-meter intervals maximum. Arden, you keep us on track, but if you see that thing again, or anything else unusual, we stop and observe. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Everyone copies." A chorus of quiet "Rogers" came back through my earpiece. We pushed on, but the atmosphere had changed completely. What started as a routine training exercise now felt like we were being hunted. Every splash in the water made us flinch. Every branch that snapped put our fingers closer to the trigger. The oppressive heat seemed even worse now, sweat pouring down our faces, mixing with the swamp water that was soaking through our uniforms. It was Liam who spotted the next sign. "Sergeant, over here," he called out, his voice tight with tension. He was pointing at a tree about 10 feet off our path. The trunk was scored with deep gouges, fresh wood showing white against the dark bark. The marks were roughly parallel, 5 of them, each about an inch wide and running vertically down the trunk for about 3 feet. Claw marks. But not from any animal that should be in these swamps. Jesus, one of the other soldiers muttered. What kind of claws could do that? I reached out and touched one of the gouges. The wood was still slightly damp with sap, fresh, recent, possibly within the last hour. Arden, you seeing this? He'd already moved closer, examining the marks with his flashlight carefully shielded to minimize the light signature. Yeah, I'm seeing it. Sarge, this is wrong. These marks are too deep, too clean. Whatever made these wasn't just scratching an itch. This was territorial marking. Meaning what? Meaning we might be in something's home range, and it might not be happy about visitors. That's when we heard the sound. It started low, barely audible over the ambient noise of the swamp, a sort of hissing, gurgling sound that made every instinct I had scream danger. The sound grew louder, closer, seeming to come from multiple directions at once. Then it stopped. Complete silence fell over the swamp. The frogs stopped croaking. The insects stopped buzzing. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. In my 15 years of military service, I'd learned that when the wildlife goes silent, something very bad is usually about to happen. Formation, tighten up, I ordered. Back-to-back 360 security. If it moves, you call it out before you shoot. The team moved quickly, forming a defensive circle, each of us covering a sector of the surrounding darkness. My heart was hammering in my chest, but my hands were steady on my rifle. Whatever was out there, we were ready for it. Or so I thought. The attack came so fast, so sudden, that later I'd have trouble reconstructing exactly what happened. One moment we were standing in our defensive formation. The next, Liam screamed. I spun toward his position and saw him being dragged backward through the water. His legs tangled in something I couldn't quite make out in the darkness. He was clawing at the ground, trying to grab onto anything, his rifle forgotten, pure panic on his face. Liam! Arden shouted, already moving toward him. But before any of us could reach him, Liam disappeared beneath a collapsed section of the swamp floor, falling into what must have been some kind of sinkhole or hidden pit. 1 second he was there, the next he was gone, swallowed by the earth with barely a sound except for his cut-off scream. We rushed to the edge of the hole. It was roughly circular, maybe 8 feet across, the edges covered with vegetation that had been carefully arranged to disguise it. A trap. Someone or something had built a trap in the middle of the Everglades swamp. Liam, I shouted down into the darkness. Sound off! For a heart-stopping moment, there was no response. Then, weak and shaky, Liam's voice echoed up from below. I'm here. I'm okay. I think. Sergeant, it's deep, and there's... Jesus Christ, there's something down here. What do you mean, there's something down there? I demanded, already pulling out my rope from my pack. Oh God, it's moving. Sergeant, there's something in here with me. It's... His voice was drowned out by that same hissing, gurgling sound we'd heard before. But this time, it was louder, angrier, and it was coming from inside the pit. And then Liam started screaming again. Training takes over when panic sets in. That's what they drill into you, over and over, until it becomes muscle memory. When Liam's screams echoed up from that pit, every fiber of my being wanted to freeze, to process what was happening, but training wouldn't let me. Arden Jenkins, rope, now! I barked the orders while dropping to my stomach at the edge of the hole, trying to see down into the darkness. Thompson, Rodriguez, secure the perimeter. Nothing gets close to this position, you understand me? The screaming had stopped, which somehow made everything worse. The silence that followed was broken only by Liam's ragged breathing and a wet, slithering sound that made my skin crawl. Liam, talk to me. What's your status? I shouted down. It's... Sergeant, I can see it. Oh God, I can see it. His voice was barely a whisper, trembling with terror. It's right here. It's looking at me. Stay still. Don't move. We're coming to get you." Arden appeared beside me with a coil of rope, moving with the kind of calm efficiency that comes from years of experience. Private First Class Jenkins, one of our newer additions, was right behind him, his face pale even in the darkness. "How deep?" Arden asked, all business. I pulled out my flashlight, angling it carefully into the pit. The beam cut through the darkness, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The pit was about 15 feet deep, the walls lined with roots and mud. But that wasn't what grabbed my attention. It was Liam, pressed against the far wall, and the thing that was less than 6 feet away from him. Jesus Christ. Even now, 3 years later, I struggled to describe what I saw. The closest I can come is this. Imagine taking an alligator, stretching it out to about 12 feet long, but instead of the wide, flat body, make it more cylindrical, almost snake-like. The head was the worst part. It had the general shape of a gator's skull, but wrong, like someone had tried to recreate it from memory and got the proportions all off. The snout was longer, narrower, and when it opened its mouth, I could see rows of teeth that seemed to go back forever, each one curved and serrated like a saw blade. But the most disturbing part, the way it moved. It didn't crawl or slither. It undulated, its body moving in waves that looked almost hypnotic. And its eyes. I've looked into the eyes of predators before. Sharks, bears, even a mountain lion once. There's usually nothing there, just instinct and hunger. But this thing's eyes held something else. Intelligence, awareness. It was studying Liam the way a scientist might study a specimen. "Liam, listen to me very carefully," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "We're going to lower a rope. When I tell you, I want you to grab it and hold on tight. Do not look at that thing. Keep your eyes on the rope. Can you do that?" Yes, Sergeant. I can do that." "Good man. Arden, get that rope ready." While Arden secured one end of the rope around a sturdy cypress tree, I kept my flashlight trained on the creature. It hadn't moved since I'd first spotted it, just remained coiled about 6 feet from Liam, its head swaying slightly from side to side. The hissing sound was coming from it, a steady rhythmic noise that reminded me of a steam valve slowly releasing pressure. "Rope's ready," Arden said. "But Sarge, that thing's between him and the rope. The second Liam moves—" "I know. That's why we're going to give it something else to think about. Jenkins, I need your flashlight. When I give the signal, you're going to shine it right in that thing's eyes. Blind it, distract it, whatever. Just give Liam a window to move." Jenkins nodded, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled out his light. "Rodriguez," I called out. "Yes, Sergeant." Private Rodriguez moved up behind us, his rifle at the ready. "You're our insurance policy. If that thing makes a move toward Liam, you put rounds into it. Aim for center mass. Don't worry about killing it. Just make it think twice." "Roger that, Sarge." I took a deep breath. This was going to be tight, real tight. "All right, Liam. Here's what's going to happen. On my mark, Jenkins is going to hit that thing with his light. The second he does, you move. You grab that rope and you hold on like your life depends on it, because it does. We'll pull you up. Don't think, don't hesitate, just move. You copy?" "I copy, Sergeant." "Outstanding." Arden lowered the rope. The rope dropped into the pit, uncoiling as it went. I watched the creature's reaction carefully. Its head tracked the movement, those cold eyes following the rope as it descended. But it didn't attack. Not yet. The rope reached Liam, landing less than 3 feet from where he stood, pressed against the wall. "On my mark," I said quietly. 3, 2, 1, mark. Jenkins's flashlight blazed to life, the beam hitting the creature square in the eyes. The reaction was immediate and violent. The thing let out a sound I'd never heard before, somewhere between a hiss and a roar, its head whipping away from the light. Its body coiled and uncoiled in what looked like agitation. "Go, Liam." Go now." To his credit, the kid didn't hesitate. He lunged for the rope, his hands closing around it with desperate strength. The moment he moved, the creature's head snapped back toward him, those jaws opening impossibly wide. "Pull!" I shouted, and Arden started hauling on the rope with everything he had. I grabbed on behind him, adding my strength to his. The creature struck. It moved faster than anything that size had any right to move, launching itself across the pit in a blur of scales and teeth. But Rodriguez was ready. The sharp crack of his M4 firing on semi-automatic echoed through the swamp, 3 quick shots that stitched across the creature's body. The rounds hit. I saw them impact, saw chunks of scale and flesh tear away. But the thing barely seemed to notice. It kept coming, its jaws snapping shut inches from Liam's legs as we yanked him upward. "Keep pulling!" I roared, my arms burning with the effort. Liam's feet cleared the lip of the pit just as the creature launched itself upward, its front claws scrabbling at the edge. For one terrible moment, I thought it was going to make it out. But the walls of the pit gave way under its weight, sending it sliding back down in a shower of mud and roots. We dragged Liam away from the edge, not stopping until we'd put at least 20 feet between us and the pit. He collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air, his entire body shaking. "You hit?" I demanded, already checking him for injuries. No, I don't think so. It didn't get me. Jesus Christ, Sergeant. What the hell was that thing?" "I don't know, Liam, but we're not sticking around to find out. Everyone up. We're moving now." "What about the creature?" Jenkins asked, his voice shaky. "We just gonna leave it there?" Before I could answer, that question became academic. The sound of splintering wood and tearing earth came from behind us. I spun around just in time to see the creature emerge from the pit, not climbing out the way Liam had, but simply smashing through the side wall, bursting out in an explosion of mud and debris. It was even bigger than I'd thought. In the pit, coiled up, it had seemed large. Out here, fully extended, it was monstrous. At least 14 feet long, maybe more, its body as thick around as a man's torso. And now, with Rodriguez's bullets in it and its prey escaped, it looked pissed. "Fall back," I shouted, bringing my rifle up. "Maintain contact, but fall back. Do not turn your backs on that thing." We started moving backward, weapons trained on the creature. It emerged fully from the pit, shaking off mud and debris, that hissing roar filling the air again. Then it did something that made my stomach drop. It stood up. Not all the way, but enough to raise its head and front section off the ground, swaying back and forth about 8 feet in the air, those eyes fixed on us, sizing us up, deciding which one of us to go for first. "Rodriguez Thompson suppressing fire on my command," I ordered. "Arden, you and Jenkins get Liam moving, head northeast, back toward the extraction point. Sarge, we're not leaving you. That's an order, Corporal. Get him out of here. Rodriguez and I will lay down cover and catch up. Move." Arden grabbed Liam and half-carried, half-dragged him into motion. Jenkins followed, constantly looking back over his shoulder. Once they'd gotten about 30 yards away, I gave the order. "Light it up." Rodriguez and I opened fire, our rifles chattering in the darkness. Muzzle flashes lit up the swamp in stroboscopic bursts. I could see our rounds hitting the creature, see the impacts tearing through its scales, but it just kept coming, slowly, deliberately, like it knew our bullets were nothing more than bee stings. "Changing mag," Rodriguez called out. "Fall back while you reload. I'll cover." I kept firing, walking backward, trying to put as much distance between us and that thing as possible. My magazine ran dry. "Changing." Rodriguez took over, his fire steady and controlled. The creature had dropped back down to all fours now, if you could call them that, and was moving toward us with that same undulating motion I'd seen in the pit. But something had changed. It wasn't rushing us. It was following, tracking. Like it knew we couldn't outrun it in this swamp, so why waste the energy? We'd created maybe 50 yards of distance when I heard Arden's voice in my earpiece. "Sarge, we've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" The kind where there's more than one of these things. I'm looking at tracks, fresh ones, coming from the east. Multiple sets. My blood ran cold. How many? At least 2, maybe 3. And they're converging on our position. Of course they were. We'd stumbled into their territory, sprung one of their traps, shot one of them. They were hunting us now, and we were in their element, their home, where they had every advantage. All right, new plan, I said, my mind racing. We're not running blind through this swamp. That's how we get separated, picked off one by one. We're going to move together, maintain formation, and we're going to fight our way out if we have to. Rodriguez, you're with me. Let's move. We turned and double-timed it to where Arden had the others waiting. Liam was on his feet now, his rifle in his hands, his jaw set with determination. Whatever terror he'd felt in that pit, he was channeling it into focus now. Good. Listen up, I said quietly. We've got multiple contacts in the area. These things are territorial and they're hunting us, but we're United States Army, and we don't run from anything. We're going to move in a diamond formation. Arden on point, Rodriguez and Thompson on the flanks, Jenkins and Liam at rear security. I'll float and coordinate. We're going northeast, fast as we can without breaking formation. Anyone spots one of these things, you call it out immediately. We stay together. Questions? There were none. Outstanding. Let's move. We started forward, weapons out, every sense on high alert. The swamp around us had come alive with sound again, but it was different now. Wrong. The normal wildlife noises were still absent, replaced by that hissing, gurgling sound, but coming from multiple directions. They were out there, in the darkness, pacing us, waiting for their moment. It was Thompson who spotted the second one. Contact right, 30 yards. I swung my rifle around and caught a glimpse of it through the trees, moving parallel to our course. Same general size and shape as the first one, but this one had different markings, lighter colored scales along its sides. Keep moving. Don't engage unless it attacks. We pushed forward, our pace quickening. The extraction point was still 4 miles away, 4 miles through a swamp filled with creatures that shouldn't exist, creatures that were now hunting us with what seemed like coordinated intelligence. Contact left, Rodriguez called out. 2 of them, moving in. Maintain formation, do not break ranks. They were boxing us in, trying to separate us, but we weren't giving them the opportunity. We moved as one unit, weapons covering all directions, each soldier trusting the others to watch their sectors. Then Arden stopped dead in his tracks. Sarge, you need to see this. I moved up beside him and immediately understood why he'd stopped. Ahead of us, maybe 40 yards away, the swamp opened up into a clearing, and in that clearing, illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the canopy, was something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. Bones. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all piled up in the center of the clearing, bleached white by the sun and picked clean. Deer bones, wild boar, alligators, and others. Ones I recognized but didn't want to acknowledge. Is that... Jenkins started to say. Yes, Arden said quietly. Some of those are human. This wasn't just a feeding ground. This was a killing field. A place where these creatures brought their prey to finish them. And we were standing right at the entrance. The hissing sounds grew louder, closer, coming from all around us now. They'd herded us here deliberately. This was their trap, their arena. And they were about to close the circle. I raised my rifle, my finger hovering over the trigger, and made a decision that would haunt me for the rest of my life. Fix bayonets, I said quietly. If they want to fight, we'll damn well give them one. You know that feeling you get right before everything goes to hell? That electric tension in the air, that moment of perfect clarity where time seems to slow down and you can see every possible outcome playing out in your head. I felt it standing there at the edge of that bone field. 6 soldiers, outgunned and outmatched, surrounded by creatures that had probably been hunting in this swamp since before any of us were born. The smart move would have been to retreat, find another route, avoid the confrontation entirely. But Arden was right when he'd said they were boxing us in. This clearing, this killing ground, it wasn't random. They'd herded us here deliberately, cut off our escape routes, forced us into their chosen battlefield. So if they wanted a fight, we'd give them one they wouldn't forget. "Arden, how many can you count?" I asked quietly. He'd already pulled out his night vision, scanning the perimeter. "4 confirmed. Maybe 5. They're staying just outside the tree line, moving in a circle around us." "Coordinated?" "Yeah. They're working together, Sarge. They're smart." That was the part that scared me most. We weren't dealing with mindless animals acting on instinct. These things were thinking, planning, communicating somehow. They knew we were dangerous, knew our weapons could hurt them. So they were being careful, patient, waiting for the right moment to strike. "All right," I said, my mind running through our options. "We can't stay here. That's what they want. Wait us out until we're exhausted or out of ammo. And we can't retreat, not without knowing where they all are. So we're going forward, straight through the clearing." "Through the bone pile?" Jenkins asked, his voice cracking slightly. "Through it, around it. I don't care. We cross that clearing at combat speed, stay tight, and we don't stop until we're on the other side. Once we break their circle, we run. Full sprint to the extraction point. We've got maybe 3 miles to cover." "They'll follow," Rodriguez said. "I'm counting on it. But out in the open, away from this ambush point, we'll have a better chance. At least we'll see them coming." I looked at each member of my team in turn. "I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be bad. Some of us might not make it. But if we panic, if we break formation, we're all dead. So we move together, we fight together, and we get the hell out of this swamp together. Understood?" "Hoo-ah," came the quiet response. "Outstanding. Diamond formation, weapons hot. Liam, you stay center. If you go down again, we're not coming back for you." He nodded, understanding I was trying to keep him safe by keeping him in the middle of our formation. "On my mark. Mark." We moved. The second we stepped into the clearing, the hissing intensified. I could see them now, shadows moving at the edge of the tree line, keeping pace with us. 4 of them, just like Arden had said. Maybe more hiding in the deeper darkness. The bone pile loomed ahead of us, a grotesque monument to these creatures' hunting success. I tried not to look at it too closely, tried not to think about the human bones mixed in with all the others, tried not to wonder if we'd be adding to the pile tonight. We were halfway across the clearing when the first one attacked. It came from our right flank, bursting from the tree line with terrifying speed. Rodriguez saw it first. "Contact right." He opened fire, his rifle barking in controlled bursts. The creature veered but didn't stop, its body serpentining through the grass, closing the distance with horrifying speed. "Hold formation," I shouted, swinging my own weapon around and adding my fire to Rodriguez's. The thing was 10 yards away when our combined fire finally knocked it off course. It rolled, recovered, and retreated back toward the trees, leaving a trail of dark blood in the grass. We'd heard it, but we hadn't stopped it. "Keep moving, don't give them time to regroup." We pushed forward, our pace quickening. The bone pile was only 20 yards away now, almost there. That's when they all attacked at once, 3 of them, coming from different directions simultaneously. A coordinated assault meant to split our attention, break our formation. It almost worked. Multiple contacts, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. The clearing erupted in gunfire. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like lightning, the sharp cracks of our M4s mixing with those horrible hissing roars. I saw one of the creatures take multiple hits to its head and keep coming, its jaws snapping at Thompson's legs. He backpedaled, still firing, and the thing finally veered away. But the one coming from 12 o'clock, straight ahead, wasn't backing down. It was the biggest one we'd seen yet, maybe 16 feet long, its body covered in scars that suggested it had survived plenty of fights before. And it was heading straight for the center of our formation. straight for Liam. "Liam, get down!" The kid dropped flat just as I opened fire over his head. Arden joined in from the other side, our round stitching a line across the creature's body. But it barely slowed. It was committed now, too far into its attack to back out. It leaped. The creature launched itself into the air, its body uncoiling like a spring, jaws open impossibly wide. For one frozen moment, I could see every detail, the rows of teeth, the cold intelligence in those eyes, the way its body twisted mid-air to adjust its trajectory. Then Jenkins stepped forward, his rifle pressed to his shoulder, and fired a burst directly into the creature's open mouth. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The creature's head snapped back, its body twisting violently in mid-air. It crashed down 3 feet short of Liam, thrashing and rolling, that hissing sound turning into something that sounded almost like a scream. "Move, move, move!" I roared. We ran, past the bone pile, past the wounded creature still thrashing in its death throes, into the tree line on the far side of the clearing. Behind us, I could hear the other creatures converging on our position, but we had a head start now, and we were using it. The next 3 miles were the longest of my life. We ran through that swamp like the devil himself was on our heels, which wasn't far from the truth. The creatures followed, sometimes visible through the trees, sometimes just sounds in the darkness. They were persistent, I'll give them that. But they were also cautious now. We'd hurt them, killed one of them, and that had changed the dynamic. They weren't hunting easy prey anymore. They were pursuing an armed and dangerous enemy, and they knew it. Every 100 yards or so, they'd probe our defenses, one of them rushing in from the side or trying to get ahead of us. Each time, we'd lay down suppressive fire, force them back, and keep moving. It was exhausting, both physically and mentally. Our ammo was running low, we were all nursing various injuries from our flight through the swamp, and fatigue was starting to set in. But we didn't stop. Couldn't stop. "Extraction point, 1/2 mile," Arden called out. Almost there. Just a little farther. The creatures seemed to sense it too. Their attacks became more aggressive, more desperate. They knew if we made it to open ground, to a place where we could call for help, their advantage would disappear. 200 yards from the extraction point, they made their final push. All of them, all at once, from every direction. It was a last, desperate attempt to bring us down before we escaped their territory. And it almost worked. Thompson went down first, one of the creatures slamming into him from the side. He hit the ground hard, his rifle flying from his hands. The creature reared up, ready to strike. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. He threw himself at the creature, tackling it around what I guess you'd call its neck, his combat knife in his hand. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and scales, rolling through the mud. "Rodriguez!" I shouted, running toward them. But Arden grabbed my arm. "We've got our own problems, Sarge." 2 more of them were coming at us from the front. Arden and I opened fire together, walking our shots up their bodies, aiming for the heads. One went down, the other kept coming. "Jenkins, Thompson, get Rodriguez and fall back. We'll hold them." I saw Thompson scramble to his feet, saw him and Jenkins grab Rodriguez and start hauling him away from the creature he'd attacked. It was wounded, maybe dying, but 2 more were already taking its place. Liam appeared beside me, his rifle empty, his bayonet fixed. The kid had never been in combat before this night, but he stood there beside me like a veteran, ready to fight with whatever he had left. "Fall back," I ordered. "Everyone fall back to the extraction point, now." We retreated in good order, weapons firing, holding the creatures at bay. The extraction point was a small clearing we'd identified earlier in our planning, a place where a helicopter could land if needed. We burst into it, immediately forming a defensive circle, our backs to each other, weapons pointed outward. The creatures followed us to the edge of the tree line, and stopped. They circled the clearing, hissing and roaring, but they wouldn't enter. It took me a moment to understand why. The clearing was too open, too exposed. They were ambush predators, comfortable in the close confines of the swamp where they had all the advantages. Out here, in the open, under the moonlight, they were vulnerable. "Rodriguez, you hit?" I asked. "Negative, Sarge. Bruised up, but I'm good." Everyone else? A chorus of affirmatives. Somehow, impossibly, we'd all made it. I pulled out my radio. "Black Hawk 2-7. This is Night Stalker 6. Do you copy?" Static then. "Night Stalker 6. This is Black Hawk 2-7. We read you Lima Charlie. What's your status?" "We need immediate extraction from primary LZ. We've encountered hostile contacts. Request immediate pickup." There was a pause. "Night Stalker 6, can you clarify the nature of hostile contacts?" I looked at the creatures still circling the clearing, at my exhausted team, at the blood and mud covering all of us. "Negative, Black Hawk 2-7. I'll explain when we're aboard. How soon can you be on station?" "Roger that. We're 15 minutes out. Can you hold position?" I looked at the tree line. The creatures were still there, watching, waiting, but they weren't attacking. Not yet. "Affirmative. We'll be here." Those 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. The creatures never left, never stopped their circling. But they didn't attack either. It was like they knew something we didn't, like they were waiting for something. When I finally heard the distant thump of helicopter rotors, I almost didn't believe it. But the sound grew louder, closer, and then the Black Hawk appeared over the tree line, its searchlight sweeping the clearing. The creatures scattered at the sight of it, disappearing back into the swamp like shadows. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, as if they'd never existed at all. The helicopter touched down, and we ran for it, diving aboard even as it started to lift off again. I watched the swamp recede below us, that dark expanse of water and trees where we'd almost died, where we'd encountered something that shouldn't exist. The pilot turned to me as we gained altitude. "Sir, we're going to need a full debrief on what happened out there." I nodded, but didn't answer. I was already thinking about what I was going to say, how I was going to explain what we'd seen. Would they believe us? Would they think we were crazy? Or worse, would they know exactly what we'd encountered and order us to keep quiet about it? The debriefing came 3 days later, after we'd all been checked over by medical, after we'd had time to clean up and get some sleep. It was held in a nondescript building on base, in a room with no windows and only one door. That should have been my first clue. There were 6 people waiting for us, 2 colonels, a major, 2 civilians in suits who never gave their names, and someone I later learned was from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, though I'm pretty sure that was a cover for something else. They listened to our story. All of it. Each of us gave our account separately, and I have to imagine they were looking for inconsistencies, waiting for our stories to not match up. But they did match up, because it had all actually happened. Every terrifying second of it. When we finished, there was a long silence. Then one of the colonels spoke. "Gentlemen, what you encountered was a group of large alligators, probably American alligators, possibly Nile crocodiles, if someone's been keeping exotic pets and they escaped. In the darkness, under stress, you misidentified their size and behavior." I opened my mouth to object, but the colonel held up his hand. "That's the official determination. Your reports will reflect this finding. You're to discuss this incident with no one outside this room. Not your families, not your friends, not even among yourselves. This is classified, and any violation of this order will result in severe disciplinary action. Are we clear?" I looked at the civilians. They weren't saying anything, just watching us with expressions I couldn't read. But I got the message loud and clear. They knew exactly what we'd encountered. They'd probably known about these creatures all along, and they wanted to make sure nobody else found out. "Crystal clear, sir," I said quietly. The others echoed my response. "Good. You're dismissed. And gentlemen, good work out there. Not many teams would have survived what you went through." That was 3 years ago. I retired from the Army last month, did my 20 and got out. The official story is I wanted to spend more time with my family, maybe go back to school. But the truth? I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't keep pretending that night hadn't happened, that those things aren't still out there in that swamp. Liam stayed in, made sergeant recently. Good for him. Rodriguez transferred to a different unit last I heard. Arden went civilian, works as a hunting guide up in Alaska now. We don't talk about that night. Orders are orders, and even retired. I'm not about to break them. But sometimes late at night, I think about those creatures, about how they moved, how they hunted, how intelligent they seemed. And I wonder how many other things are out there, in the dark place of the world, that we don't know about. Things that the government knows exist but keeps quiet about for reasons I can probably guess at. The Florida Everglades covers over 1.5 million acres. Most of it is unexplored, inaccessible except by boat or on foot. It's one of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet, home to hundreds of species, some of which haven't even been cataloged yet. And if you believe the official reports, the most dangerous thing out there is an alligator. But you and I know better now, don't we? If you're ever in southern Florida and someone suggests a nice night hike through the Everglades, do yourself a favor. Stay in your hotel, order room service, watch some TV. Because there are things in that swamp, things with scales and teeth and cold, intelligent eyes that see you as nothing more than another addition to their bone pile. My name is Marcus Delaney, Staff Sergeant United States Army retired, and that's my story of what we found in the Everglades. Make of it what you will.